a tissue, we all fall down.
The cheerful nursery rhyme we chose to introduce the letter R, Ring a Ring a Roses, may not be as cheerful a song and dance as it seems. It may just be a bit of joyful nonsense.
But it may contain a rather sinister reference to the symptoms of the terrible epidemics of plague that afflicted England over the centuries, most notably the Black Death of the 14th century and the Great Plague of the 17th, though there were many more.
The ring of roses could have been the rings of red sores or spots.
People carried posies of flowers and herbs to try to cleanse the foul air they were breathing, or at least disguise the stink of death in the streets.
Sneezing was certainly a symptom.
And when at the end of the dance the children all fall down, screaming with laughter, well, that symptom, without the laughter of course, was the last.
But whether the rhyme has this sinister connection or not, it's a rattling good way to introduce our study of the letter R, which we have so often called our problem child. Listen now to our introductory sentence, and then we recruit Rachel and Pandora to help us sort the problems out.
Rebel rabble-rousers regularly recruited riffraff for rioting. Pronouncing the letter R causes terrible trouble, not only to many foreign students of English, but also to many British people.
As we mentioned earlier, the Scots really love it and roll the R like a motorbike with a faulty silencer.
And English people can have trouble pronouncing it at all, some of them tending to say W instead.
Some Chinese too, according to the type of Chinese they speak, often find particular difficulty with it and tend to pronounce it like the letter L, as in the silly old joke about the Chinese waiter offering fried lice instead of fried rice.
It is certainly not an easy letter, as we have said many times. Perhaps we should start practicing it by following the enthusiasm of the Scots and making the noise of a motorbike revving up.
And it can be freezing in Scotland in the winter, so let's imagine we're riding our noisy motorbikes in 10 degrees of frost and we are very, very cold. Brrr.
Remember how we did this when we studied the letter B. You try it again now.
Brrr. Well, this at least has got us started with the letter R.
But as we have heard many times, it is often a very gentle sound and sometimes hardly pronounced at all.
Let's look at the basic mouth shape for the letter when it is pronounced most strongly.
You begin by pushing your lips forwards and upwards in front of your teeth, with the edge of your front top teeth almost touching the inside of your lower lip, quite low down.
The tip of your tongue is held just below but not touching the ridge of your palate, but the sides are pressed against the edge of your upper side teeth.
When you make the sound, you push your jaw forward and even further upwards and then drop it in what is in effect the first half of a circular movement, which we've more than once described as being like the movement of a piston.
And as you do this, you must feel the air vibrating along your tongue and the soft part of your palate on its way to making the sound of a dog's bark right at the front of your palate, behind your front top teeth, when you drop your chin to make a following vowel sound. Listen to my bark now and some words with the strong R sound. R, 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 rat, radio, real, rest.
Ring, riot, rot, root, rude, rust. Now you make the barking R sound and say those words.
But strong R weakens and can almost disappear according to the letters with which it is combined and its position in the word. Compare the words in the first group below with those in the second.
Race, radio, reach, rubble, rye, track, brought, treat, rhythm, irritate, wretch.
Actor, anchor, Arthur, hazard, star, danger, nicer, boxer. Strong R has become a very weak R indeed in the second group, hasn't it?
And there's a good example of strong R and weak R in one short word. Error. Now you say those two groups of words, the first with the strong R and the second with the weak R sound.
I'm afraid there is no absolute rule to offer you for the strength of the letter R, but here are some guidelines.
The R sound is usually strongest when
It is the first letter of a word, as in real and rhythm.
or it follows silent W and is thus the first sounded letter in the word, if not actually the first letter, as in wretched, right and wrong.
Or it follows a hard consonant, as in brick, cream, crisis, crop, dream, drop, grant, pride, trick and true.
Or it follows TH, as in three, through and throw.
Or it is doubled, as in erratic or barracks.
Or it is followed by a strongly sounded vowel, which may be in the same word, as in erotic or Uriah. Or at the beginning of a word immediately following a word ending in R, as in Arthur Anderson, where what would have been a very weak R at the end of Arthur by itself recovers strength from the strong sounded vowel at the beginning of the next word.
Now you practice those examples of words in which R is at its strongest. The R is usually weak when
It precedes another consonant, other than another R, as in dark, herb, farce, church, bird, turf, urge, lurk, girl, arm, born, harp, arse, harsh, alert, earth, nervous, Irwin, and four windows.
or it follows an ivy vowel sound in an unstressed syllable, as in similar, better, actor, behaviour and particular.
Consider the words particular and particularity. In particular, the first and the second AR are both weak ivy sounds.
But when the second AR becomes stressed in particularity, it not only replaces its short A2 ivy sound with short A1, but strengthens the R sound.
And we can note that a final weak R will gain strength from an immediately following strong vowel, even if they are in different words, as in 4 actors compared with 4 windows.
Now you practice those examples of words in which R is at its weakest.
The main problem with the letter R, as we have mentioned and heard so often already in this course, is that it is often difficult to pronounce when it follows other sounded consonants, particularly for some foreign students of English. We'd therefore like to take you through each consonant in turn that can be followed by R and practice pronouncing appropriate words.
In each case, watch and listen carefully, and after you've heard each group, try to copy the sounds and pronounce the words exactly as you heard us say them.
Br, brag, brain, break, bread, breed, bring, bright, British, brother, broad, brood, brook, broom, brunch, bruise, arbroath, abrasive, umbrage, umbrella.
Cra, crass, crate, crawl, crest, create, creep, cringe, crisis, criticize, crop, crumb, crust, cruel, acre, accredited, accrue.
Cr, Christopher, Christmas, chrome, chromatic, dr, drag, drain, drape, draw, dress, dread, dream, dreary, drip, drive, drop, drum, Adrian, Adriatic, dryad. Fr, frantic, frame, fraught, Fred, free, fridge, fright, front, fruit, fry, effrontery.
Gr, grab, grave, aggregate, aggressive, Gregory McGregor, green, grip, grief, grog, grope, grout, grub, grumpy, grunt, gruesome, congruent, angry, hungry.
Pr, pram, prefer, present, present, preach, priggish, print, prism, prison, priory, prognosis, promotion, pry.
Shra, shrink, shrank, shrunk, shrine, shriek, shroud, shrug. Spra, sprain, spread, spring, sprint, sprout, sprung. Stra, strap, strain, stretch, streak, strike, stroke, struck, struggle.
Tr, tram, trade, train, tree, tremble, tread, trip, tripod, tropics, troop, trophy, trouble, trust, true, try.
Thra, three, thrice, thrill, thrift, throb, throat, throw, through, thrush.
And we can add to these by revving up our motorbike again and saying vroom, which is the onomatopoeic word for the sound it makes as we roar off.
You'll remember, I'm sure, our careful notes on the prefix re under the letter e. We discussed how the common failure to understand that it has two meanings, resulting in different stress and pronunciation, leads to such increasingly common horrors as giving misplaced stress and a long E1 sound to the first syllable of the words, which should be pronounced research and recall.
We don't want to repeat all those explanations and exercises here, but I propose that you now try saying the two test sentences we practiced there to see if you have remembered the correct pronunciations.
This time you must start first. Please read the following sentence. Now listen to me reading it and check your pronunciation against mine. I recovered the lost armchair, which I'd recovered after doing a lot of research on suitable recycled materials. Now try the second sentence.
Now it's our turn again. Listen. She reliably recounted how reluctantly the researchers had responded to her request to reschedule reactivation of the reprieved reactor. But having recounted the reserves of revenue, they repentantly represented their revised records to the registrar's representatives for re-registering relative to recommencement of the required repairs and reconditioning.
If you found that you were making mistakes, when you've finished this section on R, go back to the part of the E section in which we set out the discussion and practice again the lists and sentences for the prefix RE.
It is important to get this right as it is a very common prefix and so often mispronounced.
Now, before we do our final sentences for the letter R, please note a word of warning. Just as it is important not to omit the R sound when there is a letter R to make it, it is equally important not to let it intrude where it has no business to be.
We are thinking of its intrusion by some people in words like often, which they pronounce like orphan.
Or off, which they make sound like the fish called an orf.
You hear it also with gone, lost, law and saw, which should be pronounced cleanly, as you've just heard them, and not as though the vowels rhymed with or.
This is a tiresome affectation which should be avoided, even if some duchesses do it. And now it's sentence time again. Listen again to our opening sentence, which is very good practice for pronouncing the strong R sound without letting a lisping W creep in and spoil it.
Rebel rabble-rousers regularly recruited riff-raff for rioting.
Now you tell us about these rebel rabble-rousers' regular recruitment of riff-raff for their riots.
And here's a famous sentence that provides particularly good practice for those with a tendency to pronounce R with a W sound.
Round the rugged rocks, the ragged rascals ran their rural races.
Now you tell us about the ragged rascal running round the rugged rocks.
But even that's too easy for you now that you're getting so good.
Listen now to a tongue twister that will give you more of a challenge.
Robert had written that Rupert's rudeness was no worse than Rachel's, but Mr. Wright, our headmaster, rightly replied that two wrongs don't make a right, that every degree of rudeness is reprehensible, and that any recurrence of unruly behaviour would have severe repercussions for the miscreants.
There's a tongue twister for heroes. Now you say that wonderful sentence in which most words contain the letter R.
And if you are having problems, please don't hesitate to contact us on our website to arrange a live tutorial, and I'm sure we'll be able to help you.
We've done our best, not only in this section, but earlier in the course too, to help you be correct and confident with this very difficult letter R. But as you've just heard, if you are still having problems or simply want some individual practice with this or any other sounds or sound combinations, please don't hesitate to contact us on our website. Fill in the little questionnaire to let us know exactly what you'd like help with, and we'll be very glad to set up a live two-way tutorial for you using Skype and webcams so that you can talk face-to-face with an expert tutor who will be delighted to assist you. And now I recommend a little break before we attack the letter S, which is not as simple or easy as it appears at first sight, as indeed you'll see at once if you analyse the words I've just been saying.